Data without empathy. It sounds dramatic, right? But it's real. And it's happening every day. Behind every click, every scroll, every tap, every widget in a dashboard is a human, a real person with a life, a story, a moment they're living through. And yet the further we zoom out, the easier it is to forget that, to see a bounce rate instead of a frustrated customer, to see churn instead of someone whose needs weren't met. This is a conversation, not about tools or charts or more data, but about perspective. It's about what changes when we stop treating people as data points and start seeing data as stories waiting to be told. So let me show you what happens when we forget. But before we dive into that, just a quick note about who I am and why this topic matters so much to me. My name is Jason Thompson. I've been working in analytics for over 20 years, and I'm the founder of 33 Sticks, an intentionally small boutique consulting firm. We work with companies across industries, helping them use data to make better decisions. But more than that, I started 33 Sticks to challenge the way consulting and analytics usually work. Too often, I saw environments where people were treated like line items, where dashboards got more attention than the humans behind them, where data became a shield, not a bridge. So we built something different, something a bit slower, more human, more curious. This talk is a reflection of that journey. It's about how I've come to believe deeply that empathy isn't a soft skill. It's a core competency, especially for people like us. People who work with data and whose work shapes decisions, systems, and experiences. So that's me. Now let's get into why you're really here. The algorithm that fueled a genocide. It's not a headline from some dystopian novel. It's a real thing. It happened. And it started with data. In 2021, a whistleblower from inside Facebook came forward with something chilling. She revealed that the platform's ranking algorithm, the one that decides what you see in your feed, prioritized content that triggered strong emotional reactions. The most powerful reaction wasn't love, not joy, it was anger. The algorithm gave more visibility to posts that sparked outrage. Why? Because angry people stay online longer. They click, they comment, and they argue. And that meant more ad dollars for Facebook. But this wasn't just about engagement metrics. See, in Myanmar, this very algorithm amplified hate speech against the Rohingya people, a Muslim ethnic minority. It spread propaganda. It radicalized users. It helped ignite what the United Nations called a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. Just let that sink in. An algorithm optimized for engagement became a weapon of mass division. And the worst part, it wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. And it's easy to look at the Facebook example and think, well, that's an extreme case. That's an outlier. But is it? You see, we're surrounded by data. We collect more of it now than at any other point in human history. Every second, clicks, swipes, purchases, pauses, shares. Yet the more data we collect, the more we risk forgetting it came from people. We optimize for clean dashboards, for performance metrics, for shareholder slides, but not for meaning. Technology has outpaced our empathy. Automation, AI, dashboards that update in real time. We've built incredible machines, but often forget why we built them in the first place. And maybe most importantly, we've optimized for attention, not understanding. Clicks over context, engagement over insight. And the result? We treat people as units of measurement instead of as humans trying to solve a problem, fulfill a need, or just be seen. So no, this isn't just about Facebook. This is about all of us and the choice we face every time we look at a data set. Am I seeing the numbers or am I seeing people? Let's talk about blind spots, because data tells a story, but it doesn't always tell the story. We look at a bounce rate and assume someone wasn't interested, but maybe the page didn't load. Maybe they were on a subway with no service. Maybe they were trying to order something and their kid spilled a Pepsi all over their laptop. You see, that doesn't often show up in the dashboard. Or let's take cart abandonment. We love to analyze it, but the human story behind it might be, my card was declined and now I'm embarrassed. Or I needed that item, but shipping was 2 weeks out and I need it tomorrow. And even when the metrics look good, active users are up, engagement is high, we still have to ask, are we measuring happiness or just habit? This is about reframing what we think we know, because data without empathy isn't just incomplete. It can be misleading. When we start to ask what else could be going on, that's when the real analysis begins. So what actually happens when we stop seeing people and only see data? Well, first, bias gets built in. If our models are trained on biased data or designed without diverse voices, they don't just reflect inequality, they amplify it. A hiring algorithm that penalizes gaps in resumes might never know someone was a caregiver. A loan algorithm might see zip codes as a risk without seeing the person. Next, optimization becomes manipulation. We say we're driving engagement, but sometimes we're just nudging behavior. Urgency banners, endless scroll, dark patterns. We start designing for dopamine, not for dignity. Third, people become metrics. We stop asking why someone abandoned their cart. We forget that a click could mean curiosity, or it could mean confusion. And finally, we repeat harm at scale. It's not just one bad design choice. It's thousands of people affected over and over, because no one stopped to ask, is this helping someone or just helping the numbers? But this isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. So what happens when we do get it right? Well, first, we ask better questions. Instead of what's wrong with our bounce rate, we start asking, what might the person on the other side of this screen be trying to do? Empathy shifts us from assumption to curiosity. Next, insights become stories. Data stops being a collection of abstract numbers and starts becoming a narrative we can understand, we can feel, we can act on. We start telling stories with our data, not just sharing stats. Third, trust becomes a metric. Not everything that matters can be measured, but when people feel respected, when they feel seen, it changes behavior. Trust increases loyalty. It shows up in surveys, yes, but also in the invisible signals. Return visits, referrals, sentiment, forgiveness when things go wrong. And finally, we design for humans. We stop building systems that trap people, that manipulate people, and start designing experiences that support them. Empathy doesn't replace analytics. It makes it more human, more real, more useful. Early on in our work at 33 Sticks, we were brought in by Hallmark to help improve conversion rates on their mobile app. We did what we always do. We dove into the data. We looked at drop-offs, taps, behaviors, flows. We mapped the journey. We saw clear patterns, and we thought we had the answer. Then they invited us out to Kansas City. They were running a usability study, and the timing lined up perfectly. We sat in that dark room behind the glass and we watched real people use the app. And in that moment, everything changed. We saw what the data didn't show. We saw frustration, hesitation. We saw what it looked like to be a human trying to navigate something that was designed for conversion, but not for clarity. The trend we saw in the numbers, it was real. But what we hadn't done was put ourselves in the customer's shoes. We hadn't asked, what does this feel like? And that moment taught us something we carry with us to this day. You don't always need new data. You don't always need more data. Sometimes you just need a new lens. We didn't change the numbers. We changed the way we told the story to help executives feel what the customers were feeling. And that changed everything. So what does data work without empathy actually look like? Well, it looks something like this. We treat people as segments. We take a handful of behaviors and we build a persona. And then we assume everyone who matches that pattern must want the same thing. But people are messy. We're inconsistent. We're human. We prioritize what's measurable, not what matters. If we can't tag it, or we can't track it, we sometimes pretend it doesn't exist. Emotions, trust, fear, confusion, those often live outside our analytics tools. So we optimize systems instead of experiences. We make funnels tighter. We reduce friction. But sometimes friction isn't even the problem. Sometimes what's missing is clarity, is confidence, is a sense of care. We misread behavior. Someone clicks and we assume that's a win. But a click can mean curiosity or it can mean desperation. And finally, we miss what's unsaid. Silent users don't always mean satisfied users. When empathy is missing, we don't just miss insights, we miss people. However, when empathy leads, everything changes. We ask better questions. Not just why didn't they convert, but what might this person be navigating in their day? Or what are they trying to do here and how can we help them? We build stories, not just stats. Empathy helps us connect the dots between the charts. It gives us a narrative, something people can understand and act on. We design with intention, not just to make something frictionless, but to make it feel safe, respectful, and even delightful. We start to hear what isn't being said, noticing hesitation, frustration, the places where trust breaks down, even when the data looks fine. And maybe most importantly, we create feedback loops that actually care. We use data to listen, to learn, not just to label. This is the kind of work analysts can lead, not just by interpreting data, but by advocating for the humans behind it. Years ago, I worked with an online dating brand called JDate. They had a clear problem. Fewer users were upgrading from free to paid accounts. And they asked for help to figure out why. So we launched a survey. And as the responses rolled in, I dove in, like any good analyst would. But I wasn't listening. In fact, I was discounting the feedback. User error. They just don't get it. They don't know how mobile apps work. It was subtle, but it was there. A bias, a distance, a lack of empathy. Then one day, I did something that changed everything. I spent a full day in the call center. I plugged into the phone system and just listened. And I heard them. Not just their complaints, their voices, their tone, their hope, their desire for the product to work. Not anger, but disappointment, frustration, longing. Suddenly, the data had a heartbeat. So I went back to that survey and I saw it differently. Not just as responses in rows, but as real people trying to find connection. I rewrote the entire analysis, not by ignoring the data, but by grounding it in something human, by giving it a voice. And that changed the conversation. It wasn't about optimizing funnels anymore. It was about earning trust. Now, this is where it starts to change. These aren't massive process overhauls. They're mindset shifts, small rephrasings that make a big difference. Most analysts start with default thinking. What's wrong with this bounce rate? Why is our conversion flat? How do we push people further down the funnel? But when you lead with empathy, you ask different questions. You zoom in, you lean in. Instead of asking, why didn't they convert? You ask, what might this person be feeling right now? And instead of optimizing a flow, you start designing for confidence, for clarity, for care. These shifts don't require new tools. They don't require more data. They just require a new lens. And when we stop asking what's wrong with the metric and start asking what might be happening with the person, that's when data starts to serve people, not the other way around. So what's your role in all of this? You're not just an analyst. You're not just a dashboard builder. You're not just an analytics implementer. You're not just the numbers person in the room. You're a storyteller. You decide what gets surfaced, what gets framed, and how it's understood. You're an interpreter. You translate complexity into clarity. You help others see what the data can't say outright. You're an advocate for the customer, for the confused, for the person who couldn't finish the form because something didn't feel right. You're a designer of experience because every chart you make shapes a conversation. Every insight you surface nudges a decision. And most of all, you're a steward of trust. You decide whether data is used to empower or to manipulate, to reduce people to metrics or to elevate them as humans. And every single day, you choose whether the data reflects the numbers or the people behind them. Because when you take the time to look deeper, you begin to see not just patterns, but people. Data without empathy is just math. It can be optimized, gamed, misunderstood. It can lead us to profit or to harm. But empathy turns math into meaning, into understanding, into connection. Because behind every click, every bounce, every conversion or churn or exit or tap is someone trying to figure something out, trying to make a decision, trying to be seen. Let's not forget that. Let's not design just for efficiency, but for care. Not just to measure people, but to support them. We don't need more dashboards. We don't need more data. We need more understanding. Thank you.